my interest is in the way that Kafka's texts get their claws into us. We usually think of modernism as literature that's characterized by fragmentation, by obscurity, by complexity, by forms that resist any kind of easy way for us to engage with them. And Kafka doesn't really fit that. I'm trying to tease out some of the ways that Kafka's texts go against those standard ideas of how modernist literature functions and yet still compel us to call him a modernist author. I can give an example of a very short text called An Imperial Message. The emperor, we're told, is dying, and he is surrounded by the sort of greats and the worthies of the empire to attend upon his death. And he calls a messenger over, and he whispers some message into the messenger's ear. We don't know what it is. And the messenger repeats it. The emperor nods. Yes, that's correct. And he sends the messenger off. We're told that this messenger is strong, fast, powerful, that he would fly at incredible speed, if only he could. And the problem is that, of course, the palace is filled with all of these worthies who have come to attend upon the emperor's death, and they're in the way. The messenger tries to get out of the palace, but he can't even get there, let alone to the outskirts of the city, let alone to his destination. This messenger, on the one hand, intransmissibility, the message is not passed to us. And yet, on the other hand, he does arrive. We do get the force of that parable. Kafka has transmitted something to us. So, that messenger in many ways is sort of an icon of what I'm calling the silent storyteller. There is this moment of silence, this moment of a message that is not communicated, and yet at the same time, a story has been told. I'd always studied Kafka in the context of German literature as a German language writer. Then I became involved in studying Czech literature. And then I suddenly started to think, how do I reconcile these two sides of what I do? Actually, all of these various different authors that I've been studying from quite different perspectives were living in the same place at the same time. And yet the sort of narratives that were used to describe what they were doing, what sort of cultural influences were important for them, were oftentimes extremely different. We consciously or unconsciously bring different sets of assumptions when we read texts that we think are obscure. And I'm trying to turn that into something positive. So instead of thinking of Kafka in the context of other sort of canonical modernist authors, I'm actually reading him in the context and in the company of Czech authors who were there in the same city with him at the same time. One of the figures I'm most interested in is a Czech author named Richard Weiner. He's from a middle-class Jewish bohemian family of sort of social background that's very similar to Kafka's. He writes of anxiety, of abstract notions of guilt, of the sort of subterranean dynamics that occur between people. In all of these ways, there's a lot in Weiner that makes you think of Kafka. There's no way that one could plausibly not regard Kafka as an iconic modernist author, and yet, stylistically, it's very difficult to pinpoint where that lies. He writes in this extremely clear, simple prose. You read many of his stories almost with that sense of engagement as if you're reading a fairy tale. Now, generally, we don't look at Kafka and say, he's a strange modernist, he's sort of maybe not a real modernist. We don't do that because we know he's Kafka. But what if we actually find those structures that we found in these other authors? And what if we then, sort of with an open mind, say, maybe this is part of modernist literature?